Okay, we have a big daf today, so let's get started. We're on 36b, the Mishnah, 6, 7 lines from the bottom of the page. Sanhedrin The Sanhedrin arranged itself, was seated as a half circle, like the threshing floor. Kadeshi Yorona Zesas, so everybody could see each other. Ushnei Sofrei Hadayanim Omdim Lifneim, and they had two recorders. That stood in front of them. One to the right, one to the left. And they would write the words of the arguments of those who were arguing for conviction or for acquittal. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shlosha, there were three. Echad kosev divrei mazakin, Echad kosev divrei hamachayvin, v'ashlishi kosev divrei hamazakin v'divrei hamachayvin. One would write the arguments in favor of acquittal, one would write the arguments in favor of conviction, and the third would write both. There were three rows of Torah scholars sitting before them. Everybody has his regular place. Now, if they needed to add a judge, so these people served as alternates. If they needed to add a judge for whatever reason, a judge couldn't continue, or there was too narrow of a vote, then they would take somebody from the first row. In other words, clearly the first row was the top rank students. And then one from the second row would fill his place in the first row. The third row, somebody from the third row would come up to the second row. And then they would choose another person from the audience who wasn't yet an alternate and add him to the third row. He wouldn't sit in the place of the first one, but one who had left the row. So there, imagine that like the top guy was sitting, to the right, and in each row, like the best guy was to the right, and it would progress down till the least capable person of the first rank students to the left. So when the top ranked guy on the right was promoted to the court, so it wasn't that the second row guy took his place. No, the second row guy was the second ranked guy being promoted to the first rank. Everybody would move over, presumably, and he would sit in the leftmost or the least qualified point in the first row. And so with the second and third part, of course, so where do we get this from? That this is how they sat. This is from Shir Hashirim. Your navel is like a moon-shaped bowl. Don't let the blend diminish. What does that mean? Allegorically, what does it mean? Sharech zu Sanhedrin. Sharech, your navel, that's the Sanhedrin. Lama nichoshmash sharech. Why? Because it's in the center of the world. The navel is where the person, the fetus, draws its nourishment from, and so the Sanhedrin is kind of the drawing that God's nourishment, as it were, to the world. So that's the Sanhedrin. Agan, the bowl, she megina shel kol olam kulo. It protects the whole world. So you can think of a bowl that you invert that shapes or that protects you from the elements. Hasahar, it's moon-shaped. Why is that? Why is it? And this is the point of it. It's moon-shaped, like crescent-shaped. Sheidom Sahar, because it's like the moon. It's like the crescent of the moon. Don't let the blend diminish. What does that mean? If one of the judges has to excuse himself, has to leave, or recuse himself, perhaps rowing, we have to see. If there's still 23 left, that's fine. But if it would leave you with less than 23, you can't leave. Meaning, I don't think it means you can't leave. Let's see. Well, yeah, apparently it's like, obviously if there's some legal issue or he's not unwell or whatever, but you can't just say, I was planning to do something else today. so I'm going to leave. If that would leave a court of less than 23, then you can't leave. And why is it mixing? Don't let the blend diminish. The blend is like how you blend wine, right? Um, which is 2 to 1, or it's actually unclear. In some sources it appears to be 3 to 1, water to wine. But in any case, the Sanhedrin is 71, so there always has to be a quorum of at least 23. If leaving will make it less than 23, then you can't leave. Although it's unclear to me, like how does this mesh with the idea of alternates? Like just get an alternate, then you'll have 23 again. Anyway, the pasuk continues. Your stomach is like a pile of wheat. Just as anybody can enjoy wheat. Everybody can enjoy the Sanhedrin's reason. Suga b'shoshanim, which indicates that it's it indicates the nature of the public deliberation of the Sanhedrin. I guess it's like the Supreme Court publishes its written opinions, although it doesn't have to. But the Sanhedrin clearly debated. It's quite clear that they debated in open court, their theories of the case or their inclinations to convict or their arguments to convict or acquit. Suga b'shoshanim, and it's fenced with roses. Shafilu kasuga shel shoshanim lo yifritu b'hen pratzos. Even that what kind of a fence is roses? It's not much of a barrier, but it's saying that the Jewish people, even with a minimal fence, will respect the boundaries. Okay. Behind Yamalei Hahumina Rav Kana, that's when a certain Apikoros expressed to Rav Kana, Amritu Nida Shari Lichude Bahari Gavra. You say that a woman who's a Nida can be secluded with her husband, right? Afshar Eish bin Ores Ve'enam Havhavas. Could there be a fire in a pile of flax or in firewood and it wouldn't burn them? In other words, like, how can you allow such a thing? If they're not allowed to sleep together, then how can they be in seclusion together? That would certainly they would come to sin. Amalei kind of says the Torah says about us. Shirim says about us. We are fenced in with roses. Shafilu kasuga kashoshanim lo yifritu ben pratzos. Even if the fence is a weak one, a weak barrier like roses, the people will not break through it. Reish Lakish says there's another source. Your temples are like a cross section of pomegranates, which means even the rakasech is your temple, but it also comes from the word rake, or indicates the word rake, which is empty. Even empty people among you, laying mitzvahs karimon, are still full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate has seeds. Zera says from here, when Yitzchak, in the incident of the bracha, Yitzchak smelled the clothing that Yaakov was wearing, and he thought it was Esav. Atruke begadav ela bogdav. Don't read his clothes, but his renegades. So even the bogdim, even the traitors of the Jewish people, will still have fragrance, right? So the worst of the Jewish people is still praiseworthy. Okay. Hanhu biryone dahava b'shvivlusei to Rabbi Zera. There were this tough gang of tough people that were in Rav Zera's neighborhood. Dahava makrib lahu kiheched nihadru lahu b'tuvta. Rav Zera tried to get close to them, get friendly with them, in order to have them do tshuva. Bagu kapte rabbanan. But the other rabbis were not so happy about this. When Rav Zera died, Amrei Adayna have a chariva katin shakeh have a bayal and rachman. The gang said, until today, we had this short guy with the singed legs that apparently that described Rosera, who prayed for us, who asked for mercy for us. Now that he's dead, who's going to pray for us? So then they did tshuva. So this is an example of how even the wicked people, even the relatively wicked people among the Jewish people, still are close to doing tshuva. Okay, Shaloshura. So they sat in three brothers, and we described the whole procedure for how you promote an alternate. Amar Bai Shmamina. Bai says we see from there Kinaidu Kulanaidu when they. This is as we described in the Mishnah. When you have this promotion, everybody moves. In other words, whoever was in the top position, everybody moves over one chair, so that the guy who is second is now first, and the guy who is third is now second, etc. Maybe the guy who's getting promoted from the second row to the first row would say, "Hashta mosivali b'danve." I was in the best position in the second row, and now you're putting me in the worst position on the first row. How is that good for me? Rabbi says, this is how they answer. It's better to be a tail of a fox, the tail of a lion. In other words, the last position on the first row is better than being Rosh L'Shualim, head of the fox, meaning the best position in the second row. So it is recognized as indeed a promotion. Next Mishnah, case of Ma'amin Seidim Alaydim Nefashos. How do you put fear into the hearts of the witnesses? In other words, how do you threaten them? Not threaten exactly, but caution them or make them aware of the seriousness of what they are engaging in testimony in a capital case. They would bring them into the court and they would lecture them. Shema Tomru Me'omed Umishmua, be careful. Don't you think maybe you're going to give testimony based on your understanding of something, your inference, or from hearsay, aid me pied, or testifying not what you saw, but what you heard from somebody else. Umi pied on them, and even if it's from a trustworthy person. Shema Yatam Yodim Shasafein Livdal Kaschem Drisha V'Chakira. Don't think that. Don't you know that we're going to cross-examine you? So we're not going to let you get away with testifying something that you didn't actually see yourself. And know that this is a capital case, not a monetary case. Look, you make a mistake or you testify wrongly in a monetary case, you can pay it back, or you can always pay back the money. If we execute somebody in your testimony, not only his blood is on your hands, but also the blood of all his possible future descendants. We find this with Cain, who killed his brother Havel. God says, don't tell me you're innocent. The bloods of your brother are crying to me from the ground. In other words, it doesn't say the blood of the bloods. What's the plural? Not only his blood, but his future, or his no longer future, his potential descendants. It's all on you. Same with the witnesses. And just as a digression in the Mishnah, what's the bloods of your brother mean? There was a lot of blood. He was stabbed to death, and there was a lot of blood. I think Rashi quotes the Medrash in Chumash that Hevel didn't know how to kill anybody. Nobody had ever been murdered before, so he kept stabbing him until he found the right place that would actually kill him. So there was a lot of blood. Going back to what you had told the witnesses, this is why man was created as a single being. If you teach you that if you destroy one person, we're just like everybody is potentially in Adam. Like it could be a whole world could descend from him. But if you save one life, then then it's like you saved the entire world. Um, also, why was man created as a single individual being? Um, for the purposes of peace. You shouldn't say, I'm better yichus than you. You know, my family is better than your family. We're all from the same family. Also, so not to give apikarsim, um, heretics a way to say that, oh, look, there's so many people were created. This one was created by God A, this one was created by God B, maybe different, races, right? You could say that as was common in the ancient world, every people or group of people or whatever had their own God. So by creating only man, there's only one person, it could only be have been created by one God. And say how great is God. If a person mints a coin, every coin is exempt. Cool and dumb is exempt, right? Take a look in your pocket. Every quarter, well, quarter is a bad example because they use many. Every dime, it looks exactly the same. But God, Tava Kol Adam B'Chos Adam Rishon. On one hand, everybody, is a copy of Adam, of the first man. But nobody looks exactly alike. And therefore, every person has to say, um, like for me, the world was created. I am unique. And I guess this goes back to the idea of, I am, a whole world could come from me, just like Adam Rishon. The Shema Tamru. Now back to the witnesses. Lest you say, Ma lanu latzarados. What do we need all this for? I take time out of my day, out of my life to be a witness. I'm going to be cross-examined. People are going to doubt what I'm saying. What do I need this for? Look for them, or who ate it says in the Torah, if you're a witness or you know something about the case, if you don't tell it in court, then that's considered a sin. And if you say, look, what do I need the responsibility for? I don't want this guy to be executed because of me. You should be joyful when the wicked are lost, or when the wicked perish. Okay, Laura says, Rabbi, stop. Ketzad may omen. What does it mean that you can't base your testimony on your judgment or conjecture? Omer lahen shama kachrisam. What you say to the witnesses is, maybe this is what you saw. Maybe it was a case where, let's say, you chased somebody into. Somebody was chasing the murderer. The alleged murderer was chasing the victim into a churba ruin, and you chased after him. And when you got there, you didn't actually see the act of murder, but you saw the alleged murderer holding a sword dripping with blood, and and on the floor is the victim dying, right? So it's quite obvious what happened, but it's still circumstantial. You didn't actually see it. You are testifying about what you infer happened. If that's what you saw, that's all you saw. That's nothing. Tanya. Ram Shimon Shetach said, Erev and Nechama, may I never see consolation. If this happened to me, I saw somebody running, chasing the victim into a ruin. I ran after him. This is what I saw. I didn't see the act of murder, but I saw the alleged murderer with his sword dripping with blood. And the victim, was on the floor dying. V'amarti lo Russia, mi harogol is that? And I said to him, wicked person, who killed this guy? Oh, and must be either you or me. We're the only ones here. And it's not me, because I know I didn't do it. Must be you. I said, but what can I do, Shane? I can't, I haven't been given the opportunity to mete out justice because I didn't actually see the act of murder. Only you can only execute through the word of two witnesses. But may God, who knows inner thoughts and who knows what happened, may he take retribution from you. Amru, and they said, and they didn't even get the opportunity to leave. A snake came and bit the murderer, and he died. Hi, Bar Nachash, the Gemara says, well, wait, that doesn't seem just. He should be killed by a snake. Rav Yosef said, from the day that the temple was destroyed, even though there's no Sanhedrin, there's still the four types of execution are still extant. Lo batlu, what? Still extant? Lo batlu. There's no court to mete out the punishments. How can you say they're still extant? Din arba misos lo batlu means that kind of punishment is still around. Mishin is chayv b'skila, somebody who ordinarily or in the time of the Sanhedrin would have been punished with stoning. He might fall from the roof. Or he might get trampled with a wild beast. In other words, even if the court isn't meting out this punishment, the punishment will still take place through other means. Mishnah Chayv Streifan, if a person would have been executed by burning, either he will be trapped in a fire and he'll get burned, or he will be consumed by the poison of a snake, right? So hold on to this for a second. This is saying that a snake bite is like streifa, it's like execution by burning. Let's finish what the Gemara has to say about this. Mishin is chayv hariga. If you would have been killed by decapitation by the sword, if he'll be either executed by the authorities, and that's what they use, like a guillotine kind of thing, or he'll be attacked by robbers and he'll be killed by the sword. And Mishnah Chayv Chenek, if you're supposed to be hung, either he'll die by drowning or choking. So all right. So anyway, what is the punishment for a murderer? It's saif. It's beheading, right? And yet, what happened to this guy? He was bitten by a snake, which is akin to sreifa with burning. Amrei, so they said, you know what? This wasn't his only problem. This murderer was already chayav misa b'sreifa for some other sin. And so you can only be killed once. So he was killed by a snake. So don't wonder why he was killed by a snake, which is like burning for murder. It wasn't for murder; it was for his other sin. Someone who has two, is convicted of two offenses, for which the punishment is execution. Nidon b'chamura, you get the worst one, the more severe one, and streifa is more severe than saif. Okay, now may omed. So again, we said, like, don't give your testimony based on circumstantial evidence or based on your deduction. It has to be actually witnessed. Okay, so we're talking about capital cases. So that implies that in monetary cases you can infer your testimony. Come on, who's that like? Kravacha. Tanya, we have a brayso. Ravacha Omer Gamal Ha'ocher Bein Hagmalim. If you have one camel is mating with another camel, and you found another camel next to it, so you know that camel that is mating is the aggressive one who must have killed the dead camel, and so the owner of that camel is liable. So that's inference. You didn't see that camel kill the other camel. You just saw that it's behaving aggressively, and there's a dead camel, so you're inferring. So that, according to according to this brisa, that is okay in Dinei Malchus. Where it says, well, wait a minute, if that's right, the idea of maybe you're saying hearsay, right? That you're repeating a testimony you heard from somebody else, not that you saw yourself. So you have to say the same thing. But that only applies to capital cases that you can't do that. I'm reading on that you can repeat someone else's testimony in monetary cases, but we have a mission against that. If a witness says he told me that I owe $100, right? That I say, Reuven told me that he owes Shimon $100. So I didn't see the transaction. I am relating what somebody else told me. Or Ish Ploni Amalu Shu Chayav Lo, or a third party said that Reuven owed Shimon $100. That's not testimony. Until you can testify that Shimon admitted or verified that he owes Reuven $100 in our presence, then that's testimony. Alma, even though so we see that our mission is not specific to Dinei Nefashos, right? Because aid BP aid, we understand that even in monetary cases is no good, right? So when our Mishnah says for capital cases, aid BP aid is no good, it's not being specific. It's also the case for monetary cases. So why not say the same thing as our Mishnah about hearsay? Here too with hearsay, even though it also doesn't work for monetary cases, but our Mishnah is talking about capital cases, so you can't infer from the Mishnah that it holds like Ravach. Okay, next thing the Mishnah says was Hevu Yodin. You should know that you're gonna, if you kill. It's a very serious thing. If your testimony results in somebody being executed, that's like a whole world being lost. I'm going to read the brother of here. It tells you, expanding on what was in the Mishnah, that there was a lot of blood because Cain stabbed Hevel many times. Because he didn't know how do you kill somebody? He was the first one. Until he stabbed his neck, and that was what actually killed him. He also said, it says that God says to Cain, let the earth be cursed that opened its mouth to swallow your brother's blood. Shuvla Pasna, never happened again. Shanamar Miknaf Haaretz is a miros shamanu tfilat tzaddik. From the edge of the earth, Knaf Haaretz, from the edge of the earth, we heard songs, praise for the tzaddik, meaning God, the righteous one. We'll analyze that in a minute. Miknaf Haaretz v'lo mipi haaretz, from the edge of the earth, but not the mouth of the earth. In other words, after the opening its mouth for Hevel, then only the edge of the earth opened up and not the mouth of the earth, whatever that means. So Chizkiah, Rabbi Yehuda's brother, asked him, "Vatiftach haaretz pia." I thought, is Ken here today? I thought for sure he was going to ask this. What about Korach?
About Korach. With Korach.
What about Korach? It says specifically the earth opened its mouth, right? So he answered, "L'ra pasla, l'tova pasla." It opened for, yes, it did open again for bad, but not for good. Now it's a little unclear why swallowing up, Hevel's blood was good. In fact, the context of the pasuk is arahadama. No, how does it go? No, it doesn't say whether it's cursed. Kol damei achicha tzokin elemi adam. The blood is crying out to me. So you could see it as a positive thing that it's at least accepted Hevel's blood, whatever.
Well, why not the opposite side and say that
Yeah, you could.
up for Korach, that was a good thing too, because he took
That's true.
Moshe.
Yeah,
So
that's
you
true
could say
too.
that maybe that was a good thing.
Right. Well, I mean, it was a good thing, but it was for punishment. I think that is easier to swallow, if you pardon the pun. All right. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Chia, the same Rabbi Yehuda said, "Golus mechaperes avon mechza." Being exiled is atonement for half of your sin. Meikara ksiv. How do I know? Because first it says about Cain, vayisa nav anad. You'll move around and wander in the land. That was what his curse was. But in the end, when the Torah relates what actually happened, Vayeshev be'eretz Nod, he settled in the land of Nod. So he was a wanderer, but he wasn't moving about. He settled. So half of the curse came true through his punishment of galus. The other half did not have to be exacted. Amar Yehuda, galus v'chaperes shloshet dvarim. An exile atones for three things. Shenemar, hayoshev ba'ir hazos yamus b'cherav uvarav uvadaber. This is this is from Yirmiyahu, who warns the people who stay in the city, they're going to be killed by sword, by hunger, and by disease. The nafal el hakazdim. But if you leave and but if you surrender to the kazdim who are besieging the city, then he'll be able to save his life. So by going into Golus, in other words, by surrendering to the Kazdim, you at least avoid these three types of death. Rabbi Yochanan Amar goes mechaper salakol. No, Rabbi Yochanan says exile is mechaper, atones for everything. Shnamar Gomar Shem Kishvus Aish Hazeh Ariri. A curse of Yechanya Melech Yehuda. That he will not have any, he'll be childless. And he won't succeed all his days. He won't succeed in having his someone from his children on the throne. Ubasar the Gala, but then Yechanya was exiled. Yechanya, Asir of Shaltiel, Beno. He had children. He had two children, Asir and Shaltiel. So by going to Galus, that substituted or atoned for the curse that he would have otherwise had of being childless.
Rashi says the same thing about Cain. He says,
what do you mean?
Rashi says, I was looking at this, where it says, Ba'aretz Nod, V'lo ketiv na shekipra lo galuto.
Yeah, that's what the Gemara said, right? It was clear that he was cursed with two things. Nav vanad, you'll be a wanderer, and you'll move around and be a wanderer. In the end, it says Vayeshev be'eretz Nod. He settled in the land of the wanderers. So he didn't have to move around because the Galus itself was mechaper for half of the sin. Okay. So speaking about these two sons of Yechanya, Asir, why was one called Asir? She'ibarto ima beveis hasurin. He was conceived in prison. Shaltiel, why was he called Shaltiel? Sheshasalo el shelo kader chanishtalim. He was implanted in his mother's womb against the usual rules of nature. Gemire, because we have a tradition, she'ena isha misaveres ma'umad. A woman can't conceive while standing. He nisabra ma'umad. And she did become pregnant while standing. Rashi says Shahaya Beis Asurin Tsar Vein Makom Lishkav, because Yechanya's cell was very narrow; he couldn't lie down. The Shilshul Sham Isha, and they inserted a woman there with him. This is a medrash that this is how Shealtiel was conceived. While standing up, he impregnated her while standing, and that is so the pun on the word, or the word play is Shealtiel is shatul. He was implanted in an unusual way. Another interpretation of the word Shealtiel, Shanishal al Alasa.
Wait, it says Shilshalo Sham Isha, but we're talking about the mother, right? So how could they bring a woman with the?
He was in the cell where you couldn't lie down; you could only stand up, and that's where he impregnated the mother. So they must have been standing. So on the other hand, we know, according to the Gemara, that you can't become pregnant while standing. So right. This is the unusual way in which he was implanted. So that's why he was named Shealtiel.
No, I understand that, but who it was? Oh, so it was a he that was right. Okay, so it was a.
Well, they must have both been saying if he couldn't lie down, she also couldn't
I understand
lie down.
it. So I'm thinking. So the Gemara is talking about a he. I thought it was talking about a she. So the sons of your Banim Shel
Yechanya.
Yechanya. Okay, I was thinking that she was a woman. I getting confused.
Oh, okay. So Davar Acher Shealtiel Shanishal al Laso el Zerubbabel. That God annulled. He asked a shaila. He annulled his oath about Zerubbabel. Shanizra Bavel, who was conceived in Babel. In other words, God had sworn that he's not going to have any children. And guess what? He has children. And so it must be that God went back on his word. In other words, it's like She'elas Nadarim, like having your God had, as it were, his nether annulled in order for this Shealtiel to be conceived. Umashmo, but what's his real name? Zerubbabel. What is Shealtiel's real name? Nehemiah ben Chachaliah Shmo. His name was Nehemiah, the Nehemiah of the book of Nehemiah. Okay, so we actually finished that very long daf in less time than I thought, and we will pick up here tomorrow. This is fun stuff, but not too difficult to get through. And tomorrow we have another very lengthy daf. In fact, why don't we take advantage of the 5 minutes that we have left here, so we'll make a little more progress, if it's okay with you guys. So we'll continue for a few minutes. Yehuda and Chizkiah b'nei Rabbi Chia, these two, Yehuda and Chizkiah, the two interlocutors who we've just been discussing, they were the sons of Rabbi Chia. They were at a meal at Rabbi's house. They weren't saying anything. They were quiet. Rabbi said, Agbaru Chamra Adardake. Give these young people more wine. Let them say something. Loosen their tongues a little. They're no fun at this party. Give them more wine. So they got a little drunk. They started saying, that Mashiach is not going to come before two houses in Israel will cease to be. Who are those two houses? Rosh Gol Shabbat, the Nasi Sheberetz Yisrael, the Reish Galusa in Babylonia, and the Nasi, the prince in Eretz Yisrael. And they were sitting at Rebbe's table, right? Like they're saying, your house is going to be destroyed before Mashiach comes. Shenamar. And he, meaning the Mashiach, will be a mikdash for the Jewish people, and a tripping stone, a stumbling block for 2 houses of Israel. So Amar Lahem, what he's saying, so it's saying, he's implying from there a sanctuary for the rest of the people, but a trap for these 2 houses. Amar Lahem, so Rabbi said to them, Vanai, you're putting thorns in my eyes. You're saying nasty things about my family. Amalor Rabbi Chia said, Rabbi El Yerev Nachal, don't be angry at them. Yayin Nitan B'Shivim Osios, the gematria of Yayin, wine, is 70. Yud is 10, Yud is another 10, and Nun is 50. It makes 70. The Sod Nitan B'Shivim Osios, and so is the gematria of the word Sod, secret, is 70. Nichnas Yayin Yasa Sod. If you pump them with wine, you're going to get, things that they wouldn't have otherwise said. So, don't be angry with them. They said this. You're the one that got them drunk. Amar Rav Chisda said, Amar Rav Chisda, Darish Mari Barmar. They both quoted, whoever it was quoted Mari Barmar. My dechsiv, what does it say? Vayishkel Hashem Arave V'yal Leinu Ki Tzadik Hashem Elohim. God hastened the evil and brought it on us because God is a tzaddik. Right? That makes God a tzaddik, but he brings evil on us faster than it would have otherwise come. He said, yes, it was actually a favor. The Golus of Tzidkiah took place early so that the Golus of Yechanya, which preceded it, was still there. In other words, they paved the way. It says about the first Golus of Yechanya, there were craftsmen and gatekeepers were 1,000. So what does that mean? It's talking about that the Torah scholars, why are they called Charash? Once they start talking, everybody else is quiet. In other words, they recognize that the speaker knows a lot more than you do, so don't say anything. And masker, what does gatekeepers mean? Once these Talmidei Chachamim close the gates, in other words, once they have a psak, once they conclude something in Torah, that's it. It's done. There's no arguments about it because they were so wise. How many were there? Aleph, there were 1,000. So these 1,000 Torah scholars who were already in Bavel from Golus Yechanya were paved the way, or were able to, instruct the second Golus of Tzidkiyahu. So it was good that the Golus of Tzidkiyahu was early, because those Torah scholars were still there and could pass on their Torah. Ula Amar. Allah has another explanation. Why was it good that the exile was early? So the Torah, the curse in the Torah says, "V'no shantem ba'aretz." You'll be, after this is not the warning in Parshas Vaschana. Or is it? Yeah, Vaschana. You're going to be in the land a long time, and then vishchatem, and you'll become corrupt. So no shantem, the gematria is 852, but actually it took only 850 years, because if you count the years from entering Eretz Yisrael to the destruction, to the Golus of Tzidkiah, that would be 850 years. Yes, that would be 850 years. It was supposed to be 852 years. God made it come faster, and they would, if they had stayed in Eretz Yisrael and been corrupt for 2 more years, then all would have been lost. This is reminiscent of the God taking the people out of Egypt at the last possible minute before they would have become completely assimilated.
So this is talking about the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash?
Beit HaMikdash, yeah. Amar Avacha Bar Yaakov Shmamina Mehera Demare Alma Tamane Mea V'Chamshim B'Tartin Havu. That quickly, something done quick by God means 852 years. Okay. All right, let's stop here and pick it up here tomorrow. Good progress. Have a good day, everybody.